All right, here we are in another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Let me see here. I have a little bit of a note here. I should have paid attention before I pushed the live button. Oh, okay. LinkedIn has some very specific rules. Hi, Max. My grandson in the background. All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies, and we are here today with my daughter Jessie. So Jessie is the original rookie, and what's happened is Peter is ill, and so she's filling in for Peter. Thank you, Jessie, very much for being with us. And if you guys don't know Jessie, she's my oldest daughter. And she has some very valuable treasures for me. One of them is standing behind her. She has my two grandchildren and one on the way, huh, Jessie?
Yes, another one. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Another boy.
Oh, boy. Another one would be renovations, huh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Max, I think during his first week of life, we took him to his first reno.
Yeah, that's
in
right.
his little baby carrier.
We were dragging him around.
Yep.
All right, so today we're going to do podcast number 391, and here's the title of the podcast. So, how to retire early with creative real estate deals structuring. And here is the description. Are you looking to crack the code of early retirement using creative real estate strategies? Join this episode's journey so you can get to the heart of the real estate best kept secrets. Today, we will unveil strategies so ingenious they seem almost like forbidden knowledge whispered at billionaire inner circles. Today is not your run-of-the-mill snowflake type of podcast. It is an episode beaming with complete treasure troves, overloaded with insights and actionable strategies. It would not surprise us if during this podcast you would redefine what is possible in your life. Venture with us as we unearth the most clandestine tactics and creative real estate known to date. And then, just as you think you've grasped it all, we take a deep, deep dive. Now is your chance to crack open the vault to an early retirement using simple math along with simple strategy that is nothing more than plain old common sense in motion. Tune in now and step onto the path that few have traveled, but many have yet to possess. The door is open and your adventure awaits.
It's like a magical world of real estate. I love it.
Yes. Okay, so let me, okay. Okay, so we have a question. So Sam says, within what industry does this skill be so
heir apparent?
I'm not sure what the question means. Do you?
I don't know. Heir apparent. It's usually heir meaning like I'm the heir. Heir apparent, maybe.
Yeah, like you're the heir of an estate, right?
Yeah. So I. Sorry, it's okay, buddy. But mommy's on the. It's okay. Sorry about the kids. Try to set them up best I could. It's okay. It's okay. No big deal. Always
Max
something.
is in the podcast. So I think he's talking about you being the heir. I understand now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm the heir. So I started with you when I was 18 years old. We were living together. I was living at Dad's house, and you traveled all over the country, and I kind of helped with the bills. And then finally I said, I think I want to check this out. And, math was not my strong suit. I'm an English professor, so it took me a long time to get the math. So I'm here to tell you, if I can do it, you can do it. So.
Yeah. And we have an agreement too, by the way. Mm-hmm. I don't harass her about her math. She doesn't harass me about my English.
That's it. It's a deal.
Well, I want to back up a little bit for Sam because maybe he doesn't know this. So, your mom and I were divorced when you were what, 8 or 9 years old, or
Yeah,
something like that,
something like
10
that.
years old, something like that. So, when you say you lived with me, it's because you lived with your mom for a decade before that, and then decided that you wanted to move out. So, you came to my house for a year, and our agreement was you were in college, I think, or getting ready to go to college or something
Yeah, I
like
was
that.
in college.
Yeah. And so I asked you to come live with me, and you saved a bunch of money so that you could. We had a dollar amount that you were trying to save, and you did, and so you can move out. And when you moved out, you had a nest egg. And at that time, I was traveling 40 to 45 weeks a year, and I was still doing real estate. So I managed to do 100 to $150,000 a year with your help, right? I mean, you made money too. You made money as well.
Yeah, it was a good deal.
And we were doing some subject twos, we were doing some renovations, and we were kind of like just doing, I was just doing my thing. I wasn't doing a lot. We only did a few deals a year, I think less than 4 or 5. But you would go out and talk to contractors, and you would just, you're very good at just, Jesse, do this. And you would just buy the letter, like a good academic little girl, right? And I mean that with all my heart. You would just follow the dots and the lines and the spaces, and you would just do exactly what I told you, and everything ran smoothly. And that's how we get started.
It was great.
Okay, good. So enough of that. Um, and then you grew up and you met a guy, got married, and now you're a professor
All
in a
these years.
college, obviously,
Yeah.
and run some big program and an administrator. And yeah, you definitely surpassed me in the arena for sure, which is
Not
exactly
true.
what I wanted.
Not
Exactly
true.
what I wanted. So, all right. So today, what I want to talk about is this most amazing thing on planet Earth when it comes to real estate. I had come from the car business. I owned a gas station for 27 years, if you didn't know that. And I used to buy and sell cars. And I did that for a long time, right? I did that when I first started doing it. I was not your typical used car guy because I was honest, number one. And number two, I was not trained by normal guys. I just learned it all on my own, right? So the biggest thing that happened to me was I would buy and sell cars. And the first car that I ever bought was from a guy's brother that owned a big dealership. He owned 8 or 10 dealerships in my city or around surrounding cities. And his brother sold me my first car. And my first car uh, was a nightmare because he sold it to me with a lien on it. It means somebody else owed money on it and it didn't have a free and clear title, which means I couldn't sell the car. So I paid all these thousands of dollars for this car and he stuck me with it because it had a lien. Okay. So, hi, sweetheart. There's my granddaughter. So, anyways, he stuck me with this lien. So I eventually got out of it because it was, and at first I was kind of pissed off about it. But eventually, what I realized was that the uh, the lien was an issue. So I go through a couple decades of like going through cars and paying off liens and getting titles and all that kind of stuff. And then I decided I wanted to like learn about flipping houses or how to do house deals. And one of the very first things that I learned is that with a house, it's different than a car. Because with a car, you have to pay the lien off to get a clean title to pass the title to the next owner.
Yep.
With a house, you don't need to do that. With a house, you can pass the title with the lien. And when I found that out, I was like, "What? Oh my God, yeah." Like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of liens get passed all the time. And as I went through my career, and my seminars and my books, I learned that that was called subject to. So subject to means that you are passing a deed subject to the underlying agreements of those loans. So it's subject to the agreements of those loans. So if somebody has a loan for 85 years and it's 200% interest and it's $65 million a year, $65 million a month for a payment, that's what you're agreeing to.
And the subject to has to do with the legal document, right? Because it literally says subject to.
No, yeah, some of the cover your butt letters, cover your ass letters, CYA letters say that, but no. Basically, what happens with subject to is that people think it's illegal because they think that there's a due on sale clause. So the bank puts in all their documents. If they sell the property, they want to get paid, right? So the problem is that people think that if you transfer the lien, if you transfer the deed without the bank's permission, you'll get in trouble. So the truth of the matter is that it's not like that. Because what happens is there's a note, which is the clarification of all the loans agreements, like how much did you borrow, how much is the interest, how much are the payments, what are the defaults, all that kind of stuff. So the note actually has all the rules and regulations. If you don't pay, if the house catches on fire, who gets the money, it has all these agreements in there. So the note is the actual lender's agreement with the buyers, well, the lender and the lendee. That's the agreements they made on how the loan is going to go. Unfortunately, notes are like as useless as toilet paper. If you don't have anything to back up the note, when you don't pay, the buyer can't pay the note, then what happens is the seller has no recourse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. It's I feel like this can sometimes feel like a more complicated deal than some of the straightforward deals. But what I like about this deal is it's like once you kind of figure out how to do it, it's easy to actually do once you figure it out.
Yeah, if you get all the considerations out of your head, then you can do the deal easy. All right, so we have this note. So what happens is the lender says, I will give you this note if you give me collateral. And the collateral is the house. So if you give me, I'll give you this money to buy the house, and I'll write this note. And if you don't pay me, I want the house back. So you have the note and you have the house, and there's a gap between the two of them. So the way you connect the two is with this thing called a mortgage. So a mortgage is the bridge between the note and the collateral. Okay. So what happens is if you don't pay, meaning the borrower doesn't pay, then the lender can go after the collateral. And the only way that the lender could do that is in a court of law, and it's called a foreclosure. And there are laws and proceedings on how to do that so that the borrower doesn't get ripped off. A lender doesn't steal their equity. By you were 3.5 seconds late for your mortgage and taking the house back. Because that's how it happened in the early days, right? So that's what a mortgage is. So the mortgage is the bridge that goes between the note and the collateral. Now here's the trick, and here's what took me a bunch of years to figure out. The due on sale clause is when somebody does a subject to deal incorrectly and they break the collateral chain.
Ooh.
They break that bridge.
Yeah.
And that's when the bank calls the loan. Or a lot of times you'll get like a little city that has one bank or two banks or three banks, and they somebody, like I had a house one time, a friend of mine that had a house, and she moved out of state, but her ex-husband was in cahoots with all the banker guys. They all played golf together, they played cards together, they drank together, and so they were giving her a hard time about the loan because they were friends with our ex-husband.
Sure.
And it was dirty pool, right? So that does happen sometimes. But the point is that if you don't break the collateral, then the bank has no problem with doing this deal. So that means you could take somebody's house and take over their mortgage and make their payments for them, and the bank doesn't care. Right? Now, it seems hard to believe, but it actually happens. In fact, if you go to Google and do your research, not that Google is a good place to do research because there's a lot of crap on the internet, but if you type in a thing called, it's called a settlement statement. If you put in government settlement statement, or it's also called a HUD-1. Now, most people don't know this, but every transaction in the United States these days goes through the government to make sure there's no fraud, right?
Yeah.
So the closing attorneys or the closing agents send the documents to the government, and they get approved and they come back. However, they do that, right? Well, if you look on those settlement statements right from the government, it says line 503 on the seller side and line 203 on the buyer side says subject to. So it
Well,
says
there
right
you go.
on the government documents that
Yep.
subject to. So it's not illegal. So if
Yep.
anybody's saying it's illegal, then they're wrong.
Yeah.
So here's my point in bringing all this up. If you follow my system, there's a hierarchy of how you do deal structures based on the equity. So at the top of the hierarchy is the least amount of money that you will make. As you go down the hierarchy, you'll make more money. So a slot deal, which is a sandwich lease option transfer, which is like lease optioning, which is like wholesaling lease options, has 0% equity. Just a plain old option has 10% equity. A rent to own, which is a lease option that you stay in, has 15% worth of equity and 20 or 25% worth of cash flow. That's different than a slot deal. It's the same type of transition, but you stay in the deal. The slot deal, you don't. The one below that is a subject to, and then the one below that is rehab retail. One below that is wholesale. And one below that is owner financing. If you notice, so it's 0% for a slot in equity. It's 10% for an option. It's 15% for a lease option. It's 20% worth of equity for a subject to, 30% for a flipping rehab,
Yeah.
40% for wholesale, and 100% for. So the further you go down, the better off you are. So the way my system works is that when you're at the top, you're doing the option, the slot deal, the option, and the rent to own. Those are all just lease options, and you have no risk. You're
Yeah.
not getting a deed in your name. So
Yeah.
you don't
And
have
it's
to worry
paperwork.
about anything. And it's just paperwork. That's right.
It's paperwork. And there's money in every deal, right? I think that's the cool thing about the system is that no matter how much equity you have, right? There's always solutions. Or don't have, right? There's always solutions to what you're trying to do. And I think you usually like to say, doing these deals are easy, it's so much easier than a renovation, right? And the risk, like you said, is so much lower. And these deals are great beginning deals. And I think like it's a great place to start in this creative real estate world.
So the definition of creative real estate in my world means this. You don't control the power property. Like if you use a realtor and you're paying cash, you're replacing the money that the seller already has in the property. You're buying the edifice and the land, and you're buying all the physical universe stuff.
Right.
Creative real estate isn't doing that. What creative real estate is all about is it's controlling the paperwork that owns the house or controls the house. So creative real estate is all about the paperwork that controls or owns the house, which is the deeds and the leases and the options and the subject tos and the land contracts and all that kind of stuff. It controls the house. So Nelson Rockefeller said many years ago, the way to build wealth and keep wealth is to control everything and own nothing. And that's what he meant.
Brilliant.
So enough of that. Let's get down into, I want to do some deal structuring because I have a subject to deal now that our listeners know what a subject to deal is. So Sam had another question here. He wanted to know, within the industry, does the skill be so?
That's the first question.
Okay, go.
Yep.
Okay. He wanted to know if you inherited my skill. I think I understand that now.
I will say I took a lot of time and a lot of evenings of dad explaining it a million different ways, but then I had a light bulb moment. So these are skills that I keep in my back pocket. And the other thing that's really cool about this is I'll call him the other day. Somebody at work had a deal and I'm like, hey, I know the guy who can fix this. So like these are deals of people that you talk to. You're walking around subject to, you just talk to people and they're out there. You don't have to search very hard to find them.
Yeah. So my latest thing is you don't need to have a lot of skill, right? What you need to have is a lot of action.
Yes.
You don't need a lot of skill. You need a lot of action.
Yep.
All right. So let's go over the first deal. So my first, the deal that we're going to talk about today, which is actually a deal that just occurred recently for one of my coaching clients. So the value of the property is $380,000, but he owes $360,000.
Woof.
So that means it's 92% loan to value ratio.
Not a big spread.
That means there's only 8% worth of equity. Okay. Now the payments are $2,599.22, but that's at a 5% mortgage. Okay. The taxes are $5,600 and the insurance are $2,400 a year.
Okay.
Okay. So normally you would throw that deal in the trash. Normally I would tell you you need 20% worth of equity for a subject to deal. And the reason why I do that is because when you're doing when you're down the hierarchy, right? So you have the slot, the option, the rent to own, the subject to is the first place you get a deed. Once you get a deed, it's not so easy to offload unless you sell it, right? The other deals you could just walk away from.
Right.
Without any repercussion, or you might have a buyer and a seller pissed off at you, but there's no legal ramification that can come after you.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, it just as you go further, it's a higher commitment, right? Like the further down you go, towards physically owning the property, right? That is the biggest commitment, but subject to is kind of that middle ground, right? Where it's like
that's where the commitment starts. It's like you get a deed in your name. You get a deed in your name, and the buck stops with you. So if you get sued, you go to court. If you don't pay the loan, you're going to court. You have the deed in your name.
Right.
The deed mean you. So yeah. So here's my point: is so normally I preach, especially to my coaching clients, that if you're worried about a downturn market, then subject to is the perfect way to go because it's got a 20% spread, and most markets don't swing down more than 20%.
Right.
The worst that's going to happen is at the end of the day, you're going to probably be able to sell for what you owe. But if you're getting cash flow, you never need to sell. So it's not even a problem.
Right.
So this deal doesn't have 20% worth of equity. It only has 8% worth of equity. So here's what I want to bring to light today. When you put money into a deal, and when I mean money, I mean $5,000 or more into a deal. I prefer you don't put any money into a deal, but if you want to renovate or anything like that, then that's fine. When you put money into a deal, you have to get the deed because you want to protect your money.
You got to have some skin in the game. Yeah, you got to have some protection.
Yes, you got to make sure that you can get your money back because you control the property with the deed, right? In this particular case, if you're not going to put any money into the deal and you're just going to buy it, like on a subject to deal, when I buy them, it costs me $70.
Power off.
It costs me $70 to file the documents. That's all the money I have in the deal, right? If you do them correctly. So this is a deal like that. So the reason why I'm talking about doing subject to on an 8% equity is because we have no money in the deal.
Makes it easier.
But I want to show you the numbers so you can understand why I'm doing this. Okay.
Oh boy.
Now,
here come the numbers.
Yeah. And in a market like this, I would be worried because if the market downturns, this house he owes the O is 360, but the value is 380. It would be nothing for this property to go down to 325.
Right.
And then you're
Right.
upside down. So this is
Yep.
not for a brand new investor. This is for somebody that is willing to either take risk or they have, they know what they're doing. This is
Right.
what I prefer. Okay. So you take over the mortgage at 360 at $25.99 a month, $2,599 a month, and that includes the taxes and the insurance. Okay, with a 5% mortgage. You sell for $396,000, and I came up with that number because we used 5%. So if you take the 360 times 5%, it comes up with 396. Okay. Now, here's the interesting thing, and this is the amazing thing that this is the first time in my career, which is 30 years, that this is possible. I've never had this possible in my whole career. You're taking over the mortgage at 5% interest. What you're going to do when it comes time for you to figure out how much your rent is, which, by the way, I like to use the 1% rule. 1% means that if we're selling for $396, we should be able to get $39.96 for a rent. Okay, but in this particular case, what I did is I put it in a mortgage calculator, and I at 8%. So see, what happens is we're buying the mortgage at 5%, we're selling at 8% technically, but we're not doing it in a way where the banking commission come after us because we're doing it in a rent amount. So we can make the rent any amount we want. There's no laws against that.
You can control that number. Yeah.
Unless you're in New York, right? So, because New York has rent control.
Right.
So we sell for $396. That puts the mortgage at 8% at $35.28. Right?
A bigger spread.
Yeah. So that gives us $929 a month
for paperwork.
For just doing the paperwork. Right? Now watch this. When you add it all up, right? You can get 5% down, which is $19,800. Okay. You can get $929 a month, and you'll have $16,200 in the back end. Okay. So that means your first year you're going to make $47,149.
Woo!
For a deal that you picked up for $70. And that other investors would probably throw in the trash. Now the risk is if the market goes down, you may go below. If the market if the market dips, you may owe 360, and the property may be worth 350 or 340 or 330 or 310.
Right.
Don't worry about that. What you're going to do is you're going to hold this property for long term. So as long as you can keep renting it, you don't have to worry about the value.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that means if you take, let's do the numbers again real quick, and then I'm going to move on because I have a lot more numbers to cover. So if you were to take 396 and subtract 360, you have $30,000, $36,000.
Right.
Okay, so that's your total equity profit.
Right.
That 36,000 you get some now, so you're going to get $19,800 now, which is
deposit.
The non-refundable deposit, lease option deposit from your buyer. Okay, which if you take the 36,000 and subtract the 19,800, you're down to 16,200, which is the back end.
Yep.
So you're gonna get a house that somebody's going to give you the keys to. I don't do work to them. So you're going to get a house that doesn't need work. Okay.
They're usually pretty houses, right? I mean, you're usually talking about houses that are at that price that look really nice.
Or I can sell in a handyman special.
Sure.
So as long as I can give a little bit of a discount, I can sell in a handyman special. But I don't do the work anymore because it's too much trouble.
Yep.
So I'm gonna get the keys to the house. I'm gonna pay a $70 in my city, which is Meriden, Connecticut. I'm going to pay a $70 filing fee with the city hall, with the city clerk. right? Which, by the way, the deed that I file is a warranty deed of trust. I put the property in a property trust, which is how I secure the property and make it safe. And the bank doesn't. The bank thinks we're doing estate planning,
Right.
and I control the trust. In fact, I don't even
Less
tell
risk.
my. Huh?
I said it's less risk to put it in a trust, right? You can
Yeah.
kind of, I don't want to say hide yourself, but you can kind of,
Well, that's how
have,
politicians do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah. Trusts have been around since the Roman times. And
Yeah.
then in the early 1900s, when they were building skyscrapers in Chicago,
Hmm.
the aldermen, who were the ones making the rules, were the ones with all the money that wanted to build the skyscrapers. And they knew that if they were the aldermen and they owned the property, that people would be like, no, you can't do both.
Yep.
So they figured out how to put a property in a trust,
Hmm.
the skyscrapers in a trust, so nobody knew who owned them, and they
Hmm.
still had their alderman
Yep.
positions. And the
Just,
government, the
yep.
politicians all do this. They all have their houses in trust, so you don't know who owns them.
Right. Right.
So my point is that when I'm talking to the seller, I don't tell them I'm doing a subject to deal. What I tell them is look, I can take over your payments. And they're like,
Which is a
yeah,
relief to them. That's
yeah.
what they need. Like when somebody, can you imagine if you were in a bind, right? And you're like, how am I going to get out of this? I have no equity. What am I going to do? And some guy walks in and says, hey, I'm going to take over your payments and you get what you need and I get what I need and we're going to
Right.
call it a day. I mean, that's
And
a
not be
win
a
for
and
everybody.
not be a landlord. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's a win for everybody.
Right. So what I tell them is look, here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to put your property into a trust and I'm going to manage the trust. That's all I tell them. I don't need a long explanation with the subject to stuff, right?
And
I'm
they
going
don't
to do that
want it.
behind the scenes. Yeah, I
They
don't
don't
need
want
to
it. They just
explain
want to
all
walk away.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just tell them, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put the house in a trust, and then I'm going to control the trust, and here's how it works. And I just let them know I'm going to make the payments. I'm going to talk to the bank. I'm going to let the bank know what's going on, and everybody wins, right? So that's how we do it. All right. So 1 year, the first year we got 19.8. Plus we got 929 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Plus we got $16,200 in equity.
Yep.
Now we're going to sell this puppy on a 3-year lease with an option to purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So that means at the end of 3 years, we still have the 19.8 we got when we put the buyer in there. The monthly payments turned into $33,448,
Mm-hmm.
and the equity is still $16,200.
Mm-hmm.
So that means in 3 years, we made $69,448.
Yep. Yep.
$69,448 for
That's
$70.
crazy. I think what's so cool about this, and it took me a long time to realize, it's different streams of income, right? Money now, money later, right? This is how you build wealth. I
Right.
just read an article on growing generational wealth, right? And that's what we're looking to do, right? Is build
Right.
wealth for the future, for our kids, for our grandkids. And this is how you do it, is by
Right.
creating money now and money later. It's a
Early
no-brainer.
retirement.
It's exactly. It's how
I'm
you
going to
get to
cover.
early
I'm going to cover
retirement.
that before we
Yeah.
go before we leave. Right.
Yeah.
So 5 years, if you hang on to it for 5 years, when I mean hang on to it, you're going to sell it. You're going to sell it on a rent to own. So the person that's in there is renting to own it. So it's very possible that they're going to go get a mortgage and cash you out.
Mm-hmm.
Most don't these days. I
Mm-hmm.
prefer they don't. I
Do.
prefer they just they get their 3 years, and I set them and forget them, and I just let them stay there because I'm making so much money off of them. Right?
Yeah.
But a 5-year lease term, you get your 19.8 money now. Your monthly income turns into $55,740, and of course your back end money still stays at 16.2.
Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Trifecta.
Yep. So money now, money monthly, money later. That gives you $91,741.
You could do a lot of things with the $91,000.
Right? It's pretty interesting, right?
It's amazing. And like, I don't know if you're going to talk about this. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but like, what I love the most, what's the coolest part out of all of this is you haven't even talked about the benefits for the buyer, right? Like the person who's in that house, who can't afford to qualify for a mortgage right away, sometimes is the case. You know, I'm a millennial and that is the deal for our generation, right? So you go into this house, now you've established that you've made on-time payments, and now you're going to be able someday to qualify for a mortgage. Whereas before, I don't know if you would have been able to do that, right? So
Exactly.
it's good for you as, you know, the middleman, if you will. It's good for the person who's trying to get out, and it's good for the person who's trying to buy. Like it's the best for everybody.
Nobody loses. Yeah.
Nobody loses. So sorry if I jumped on.
Everybody's getting what they want,
Yeah.
and it's not costing anybody something they don't want to pay.
Yep.
Which,
And
by the
that person,
way, I would like to take a left hook because I'm surprised you didn't give me a hard time because I didn't know you were going to be here, and I put snowflake into my.
I knew you did. I was like, I'm gonna let that one go.
Basically, I'm borrowing the language snowflake. In other words, it's not an easy deal. You got to have thick skin to do a deal like this. You got to
You
have a
do.
little bit. You got
As
to have a
somebody
little bit of
who's
trust.
tried some of this, like you gotta put aside your personal feelings and like you gotta put on your business hat and like your big boy pants or big girl pants, and you gotta realize like this is a business transaction, and that's a hard lesson to learn. So but it's worth it. It's worth
And
it.
I'm definitely not easy on you with the millennial stuff and the
No,
snowflake stuff because you definitely come from the academic world and you have all that. I
I
mean, I
do.
haven't been that way lately, but
Yeah.
I definitely give you a hard time. But I want to give you credit where credit is due because I just read an article or a couple articles recently that 55% of the market in 2023 was millennials.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
So
I mean, it makes sense.
the
Yeah.
boomers were banging you guys by saying you didn't want to own anything. It's not turning out that way. It's turning out differently. And there's actually loans and ways to purchase properties just for millennials. The reason why I found this article is I did it a couple podcasts ago. I'm not going to go look for it now, but we were talking about the techniques of today's market and about how to communicate because there are so many people like millennials on the market that if you're not talking to somebody by text on their phone or if you're not using electronic devices, if you're not advertising online and you can't do real estate anymore, right?
We're
So
terrified of our own shadow. Millennials are known for like not answering the phone, not answering the door. So you got to get kind of sneaky.
right. Okay, so now I want to take a deep dive. So very often I would in my seminars and all my places that I teach, this deal that I just told you, I would take an hour or more sometimes and draw it out on the board and show you how you can make all this money. But I want to show you the real money that we never get to talk about because there are so many people that listen to me and Peter and yourself when you're around that uh, they never get past the threshold of the money now. The money monthly is conceivable, and the money later doesn't even count
It's
because
a
it's like,
long game.
yeah, it's and like you said with millennials, they don't have long. Long to them is a week, right? So seriously, so
Well, for some of us, yes.
yeah. So the point is that you don't count that money because you don't have it, but the money now you can count, and the money monthly you can put in your paws and spend it, right? So we never get to the real money in the deal. So let me cover that. So this is the deep dive I was talking about. Once you start getting these properties, right? What's he doing to you?
That's Molly. She's pretending that she's a thing from the Addams family. She really
Oh,
is
the
into that
hand.
right now.
Okay. Oh,
Sorry.
that's all right. It doesn't bother me as long as it doesn't bother you. You're just good with it. So here's the first thing that happens. Okay. We talked about cash flow already. So you're getting cash flow of $929 a month, right? And if you add that up over 3 years, that's 33,000, and over 5 years, it's 55,000, right? The next thing you get is that your buyer is buying on a lease with an option to purchase. So it's not a rent to own. It's backwards. It's actually an own to rent,
Right.
right? So basically, you're selling the house first and telling the seller, I'm giving you an intermediate mortgage until you
Hmm.
can get qualified.
And they feel
So
like they have control of that, right? Like they feel like the
they do.
ball is in their court, and it
They do.
is.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they could do things they want with it. They could paint it. They can do whatever. Right. It's their house, and nobody needs to know the difference.
Yep.
Right. And we allow them to pay the mortgage or pay a rent. And that
Mhm.
rent amount should be predicated not off of how much the rents are in your area, like if you use Rentometer or something like that. You don't do
Mhm.
that. What you do
Mhm.
is you predicate the rent amount based on how much the current mortgage would be. That's
Right.
why we're using an 8% mortgage at the $3,500 a month,
Mhm.
because you don't want to have the person in the house paying $2,500 a month, because that's what
Mhm.
the rent should be,
Right.
and then they have to go get a mortgage, and the mortgage is $3,500 a month. Who's going to want to add $1,000 a month to their monthly expenses?
Sure.
Nobody.
Right. Nobody.
So what you want to do is you want to get them to get used to paying the 3,500. In fact, I would do 37 or 3,800, make it a little bit higher, so they when they go get their mortgage, they get some relief,
Yep.
and it
And
gives them
honestly,
an
these
incentive to
days,
do that.
yeah, people are expecting to pay that kind of money. It's sad, but that's the way the market, you know what I mean? Like people are used to that.
Well, the average price of a house in America is 419,000.
It's crazy.
So, all right, so we got cash flow. We talked about that.
Mhm.
Now, what we're going to do is, because we're getting a rent payment, which means usage of the property, they don't get any money towards their mortgage or nothing.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
no allowance for pay down of the mortgage.
Right.
We're going to take that money from them, that $3,500, and the first thing we're going to do is pay our mortgage of the 2,500.
Yep.
Every time we make that mortgage payment, that reduces how much we owe the bank.
Yep.
So that means in a year or two or three or four or five or 10 down the road, when the buyer actually gives us their money, we owe the bank less money and we have more
Yep.
profit.
Yep. So
Okay.
we're chipping. They might not be chipping away, but we're definitely chipping away.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they still owe the money, and they're paying the rent. So the first year, and what I did is I did this off of an amortization formula, which means,
Mhm.
amortization means that you owe $100,000 and you got a $500 payment. That $500 a month, some of it goes towards interest, some of it goes towards principal, and
Right.
every month it changes, because every time you pay the principal, the interest changes. So an
Sure.
amortization formula or table breaks down over the course of a loan how much each month you're paying for interest and how much you're
Right.
paying for the principal,
Right.
right?
Same payment, but is
Yeah.
sent in different spaces, right?
Right. Well, it shows you how it's paying down, how much you
Right.
owe after each payment,
Right.
because you put some towards interest and some towards principal, and this is how much you owe on this month.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
if you have 30 years, you got 360 months. So each month it changes, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I took a mortgage of the 360,000, and I took it at the 12-month period. Okay. Because that's average. These numbers are actually ridiculously conservative. Because if somebody's
Mhm.
15 years into their mortgage, or 10 years into their mortgage, or 5 years into their mortgage, these numbers are much higher.
Right.
Okay. So I just took the first year. So at 12 months, this is what you
Mhm.
do. So the first year you would pay down on your mortgage $6,456.
Not bad.
3 years you'd pay down $19,369,
Wow.
and in 5 years you would pay down $32,282.
And for $70, let's remember in the
We only
beginning, we
invested
did
seventy
this.
dollars to do the filing. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Now the next thing that happens is, because you don't live in the house, you're allowed IRS depreciation.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the IRS says, well, you're using the house, or the house has use to it. So it's got wear and tear. So you can write that wear and tear off.
Right.
So that's over 27 and a half years. They
Yep.
give you 27 and a half years to do this write off, right? Which equals 3.64% a year.
Money, money, cha-ching, cha-ching.
So your IRS deductions, now this is not cash you get in your pocket, but it's money you can use on your taxes to reduce your income so you pay less taxes.
Yep. It still counts. In my mind, that still counts, right?
You don't have to pay the IRS, so you get to keep the
Yep.
money.
It's still money in your pocket.
So the first year you save $2,752.
Amazing.
3 years you save $8,256.
Wow.
And in 5 years you save $13,759.
Those are a lot of numbers. Good numbers.
Yeah. Then the next thing that happens, which I didn't do for many decades and I now do, is it's only fair that you get appreciation for your property. So if
Sure.
somebody's going to live in your property for 3 years, you should not give them today's price and expect them to pay it in 3 years from now. So what we used to do is we used to do it so that what happens is after the first year, in other words, if the first year was when they can get the price that you offered them. So at this point, it would be the 396.
Yep.
After the first year, I used to add a 0.5% per month, which was 6% a year.
Mm.
I no longer do that. I now add 0.25% on month one,
Right.
which is
Okay.
3% a year. What I tell people is if you cash me out in the first year, I will give you back that 3%.
Okay. That's a
But
good
on
deal.
year, and I give it to them. I give it to them in a seller concession. In other words, I give it back to them
Yep.
in the closing,
Yep.
so they get 3% back, right? And in this
Yep.
particular case, that's $10,800,
It's a good chunk of change.
right? So they'll if they close within the first year, I'll give them back the seller concession.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I put 0.25% in the option agreement. So that means every month that they go, the price of the house goes up 0.25%,
Yep.
or 3% a year.
Yep.
So appreciation for 1 year is $10,800. For 3 years, it's $32,400.
Wow.
And for 5 years, it's $54,000.
That's
And
amazing.
this is all back end money. This is all money
Not the money you're
that
thinking about. Right. So now you've got the 3 money now, money monthly, money later, right?
yeah,
And then these are the hidden gems of money that you don't have to even do anything. You're not even thinking about, and it just appears and you're like, "Oh my God, look at this. How did
right.
that happen?"
Yeah,
You
it
know?
appears when you're doing your taxes.
It's amazing.
Then the last one, which nobody, I don't know why, I have no idea because I have my own coaching group. I have a software company called Creative REI Reply that does all, that automates the creative REI, the creative real estate system completely. We put
Mhm.
leads in your account. We text them for you. We have AI that responds. We have a robot that does all the paperwork for you. It's all automated. It's
It's
completely
amazing.
automated. It's called Creative REI Reply, right? So the point is that I have a coaching group there, and then I have another guy I coach. So I got 3 coaching groups, and I'm around this all the time. I mean, I like swim in the creative real estate pond every day,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Nobody ever talks about this, and I have no idea the reason why. Because I have made over the year hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing in the world.
Tell us,
Here's
tell
what
us.
happens. Here's what happens. On February, or in February, the first week of February, usually,
Mhm.
you will get in the mail a notice from the bank that you've been paying the mortgage to. Okay.
Okay.
And this notice says, "Dear sir," with your seller's name on it, "you have paid this much interest for this year on your loan."
Imagine that.
You take that piece of paper and you give it to your accountant, and it reduces your income by that amount of money. Because interest on a loan, especially on an investment property, is a write-off,
Holy smokes.
right?
And you
So
pay a lot of interest
on,
at 5
on
or
this
6%.
on this particular house, it's $14,167 a year.
Oh my
For
God.
3 years, it's $42,501, and for 5 years, it's $70,835.
Wow.
Right? So let me see. I wrote a note here. I can't understand it. So it's $1,180 a month
Wow.
is the interest. Now I'm talking about. Remember, I told you I took it at 12 months.
Yep.
So where you got the further you get into the mortgage, the more you pay principal reduction, and the less taxes you pay.
Yep.
So we got low principal reduction, which was
Yep.
$6,400 a year,
Yep.
and got high interest. So
Yep.
they juggernaut back and forth. So when you get less when you get less interest, you're getting more principal reduction.
Yep.
So there's no loss anywhere.
No.
It's
And
all
when
right.
you start making real like crazy money like this, right? Those deductions are everything, right? Like when it comes time for you to pay your taxes, to
Or
be
not
able
pay
to
your
have
taxes.
or not pay your taxes, right? Like
This is
these
why
deductions.
this is why I laugh when the politicians say that the rich people don't pay taxes. Well, it's because they own real estate, and the laws were written for them, the politicians, to not pay taxes, and they're going against their own blood,
Yeah.
and because they get the write-offs. They're one of those people.
Yeah.
People accuse those of what they themselves are doing,
They absolutely do.
right? So the politician that says I'm going to go after the rich guy, well,
Mm-hmm.
he's just using the tax laws. I
Yep.
didn't write these. I didn't write this book. I'm just
Yep.
reading it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like I can't tell you. I'm not the author. I'm just
Right.
reading the book. You know?
And it's
No,
accessible to anybody. That's
right?
right. Like,
Yeah. You just need an accountant, a CPA to do
yep.
it. I think last year it cost me for each company it cost me $1,500 to have my accountant do my
Worth
taxes.
every penny.
Yeah, don't tell him that though. I tell him it's too much money. Now watch this. You ready?
Yep.
Because I just gave you a whole bunch of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Now watch this. For 1 year, okay, 1 year, the grand totals are uh, $34,174,
Mm-hmm.
plus the deep dive is
Mm-hmm.
$47,149, at a total of $81,324 for 1 year. $81,324
On one property.
on one property
One.
because you got the deed.
Yep.
3 years, it's 10 to $102,526. Plus the deep dive is 69,448, $69,448
Mm-hmm.
at a grand total of $171,974. 5 years, the money now, money monthly, money later equals $170,876, 170,000. Plus the deep dive money is $91,741. A grand total of $262,617
I don't have to be good at math to know that those are some good numbers.
for one deal.
For one deal. Imagine if you did like 2 or 3 of these, right?
So
Like,
here's my point. Here's my point. If you did one a year at the end of 3 years, so if you did 3 deals or one a
yep.
year, you'd make $515,922.
Mm-hmm.
If you did one of these a year for 5 years, it's $1,313,085.
What? The math is mathing, as the kids would say. The math is mathing. That's amazing.
So if you did one deal a year with these numbers. And I'm talking about a deal that remember what I told you. We started off with a deal that most would throw in a garbage pail.
Yep.
We're
And
not
it cost
talking
you
about some
$70.
now wait a minute. We're not talking about you have to have negotiating skills.
No.
You have to have all these special skills. You have to be me to talk this customer into it. We're talking about a seller that has a property that has a value of 380,000 and they
Yep.
owe 360. They only have 8% worth of equity. It costs 10 to 15% closing costs with a realtor. So they have to bring money to the table if they want to get rid of this
Yep.
deal. They aren't going to get any money out of it at all.
Nope.
It's going to cost them money. So if they give you the keys and you take over the mortgage payments, you put it in a trust and you manage the trust, they win
Yep.
big time.
They
So,
win, you win, everybody wins.
so here is my webinar this month. I do a webinar every month. So if you want to know how to do that, then you need to go to either Flipping Houses for Rookies and just go to the free page stuff or sign up for one of my courses and you get on my email list and then you'll know when I'm doing my webinars. Or go to Creative REI Reply, or there's a link. I didn't even do the intro, our beginning intro. There's a link in the chat, a link in the description. You go there, and when you sign up for the free stuff I'm giving you today, then you can get on my email list. Here's the point: is most people think you need skill, or I have skill to do these deals. What you need is an engaged lead. An engaged lead is someone that's motivated enough that they want to hear your story and how you can help them, and they will literally throw the keys at you.
Yep.
So, what you need to find an engaged lead is volume.
Yes. A lot of people, right?
Right.
A lot of
So
leads.
that's why we invented Creative REI Reply, and this is not a plug for that. I'm just telling you why it is. So you need to use a tool like Creative REI Reply, which there is none other like it on the planet. That I mean, there are tools that do some of what we do, but not all of it under one umbrella. So what happens is all you need to do is you need to go through enough names and enough people with the automation to find this seller.
And can I just say really quickly, like when we were doing this 10 years ago, it was not this way. I remember us sending out yellow letters. I would spend Saturdays addressing envelopes and putting stamps on things.
Putting
And
signs
then
out.
putting signs out. That's how I learned how to drive, is like dad would say, let's get in the car, and we'd put signs out. And then there was one time where I wasn't paying attention. So you put signs on the route on my way home from work. It was hilarious. But, it's so easy now. And I just remember, we had these sheets and we'd have to get on the phone with every person interested. I'd keep those damn sheets in my car, in my laundry room, at my desk, because like when they called, you had to pick up the phone, right? You've got a potential buyer. You got to talk on the phone right this second. And now it's so streamlined with this Creative REI Reply. I mean, it's a whole new world, and it's so great that, you can streamline it more,
Artificial intelligence the internet changed the way the business is, but artificial
Sure.
intelligence, I mean, we have a part of our system right now, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but part of our system is we're getting ready to release this month. Of course, I'm very fortunate because I had these ideas, because I'm that guy. I had these ideas, and I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we could blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
And everybody's like, that's a cool idea. But I'm not the tech guy to do it. I have tech guys to do this, right? So I've been kind of preaching or beating the drum like, well, wait a minute. If we texted 1,000 people and 200 responded, just as a number, I'm not saying, because it's between 20 and 30% respond, right?
Yep.
So 200 responded. What happened to the other 800?
Right. They're still out there.
So what are we going to do? Keep texting them?
Try a different outreach, maybe. I don't know.
So this becomes the new part of our software, what we call it voice drops or voice
Mm.
outreach is what we call it. And what happens is we've trained a robot. So what happens is we have software that I can call into the phone. There's a way we can do this with a mic. I do a 3 minute or 30 second. I do a voice recording of my voice. The software simulates my voice. This is like deep fake stuff, right? It simulates my voice and it automatically calls those 800 people and say, "Hey, Joe, it's Bill Hawthorne. That property over at 123 Main Street, did you sell it yet? I
Yes.
want to buy it from you." And it sends a message, a voice message, or multiple voice messages to these 800 people that didn't respond to me.
That's bananas.
And there's nobody doing that.
No.
Anyways, let's go back to this deal. So if you did one a year for 3 years, that's worth $515,000. If you did one a year for 5 years, it's worth $1,313,000. So here's my question before we go. What's happening in your life that's stopping you from doing one deal a year? Oh, yeah, by the way, this deal should not take more than 5 or 10 hours to do.
Isn't that crazy?
So what's happening in your life that is distracting you from doing this deal? Are you making excuses like, I don't know how to find the buyer? I don't know how to find the seller. I'm scared. I'm nervous. That's all in Creative REA Replay. It's all there for you. I mean, I'm not telling you have to buy the system, but I'm telling you for a few dollars you can get in and you can find this buyer. You can find this seller and then find the buyer. All you have to do is just dig for the gold, and somebody's digging for you. There's actually machines that are going to dig for you. We do 90% of the work for you.
Yep.
So my point is what's happening in your life? Is it a job? Is it parents? Is it kids that you can't spend 5 or 10 hours a year? Let's say it's 50 hours a year
That's insane.
to find this deal so that you could make the first year 81,000 on one deal, 3 years 171,000, and 5 years 262,000 for just putting the deal together. Let time, because time changes everything. Let time change your life for you. This is like in the old days, they talk about putting money in an IRA, and they talk about putting money in a retirement fund or putting it in the stock market and letting it grow.
Yep.
Real estate trumps all of that.
Yep.
Real estate is the most safest investment. Even when it goes down, it always comes back up. There's never been a time in history that real estate went down and stayed down.
Yep. Right? We are people who will always need homes. It's just the reality of the world. Yep.
And proof of that is that the current administration, meaning the Democrats, had the borders wide open for whatever reason, and people are pouring into this country. And they're closing schools, like in New York City, they closed the schools when it got 15 degrees out because they had no place to put these people. And you're in the business of having a place for these people to go. So why would you be afraid of doing this? And if you are afraid of doing it, I tell my coaching clients all the time, all you need to do is you get an option agreement with somebody that says they want to do this deal. You sign an option agreement, you give them $1, and you go find your buyer. And once you find your buyer and you have your seller, you just put the deal together and make money. You don't have to do anything. You're not obligated to do anything until you're ready.
Yep.
So fear is not a good excuse anymore.
Nope.
Used to be, but not anymore. If you found a subject to deal like this, you could just have the seller sign, you know what? I'm going to put this house in a trust and I'm going to manage the trust. But before I do that, I'm going to go find my buyer. When I find my buyer, I'll put all the documents together and the seller will say, okay. You sign an option agreement with them. You give them $1. I prefer $100, but you give them $1. Okay. And
Right.
you write them a check so you have a record.
Yep.
You go out and market this property and you find your buyer. I'm saying buyer before. You find a seller, have the seller sign these documents, and then you go find your buyer. Now you have all the chess pieces on the chess table.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what to do with each one of them. And you
Yep.
put it together and you make your money. There is
Yep.
no risk. There is absolutely no risk at all.
You're not, yep. You're not putting money into the property. You're not doing renovations. You're not like, oh my God, I'm, $30,000 deep into this project. How do I get out? None of
If
that.
the market crashes next month, you don't have to do anything. You just tell the
No.
seller, hey, the month of either you reduce your price or I can't buy it.
Yep.
There's no risk at all. So what is happening in your life? Think about this the next hour, 2 hours, day, week, month. What is happening in your life that you can't put together a creative real estate deal like this in the next year? One
Yep.
deal. One deal. One deal. That should be your goal. I need to do one deal.
Yep.
And what will eventually happen is it might take you a year to do. It might take you 5 years to do your first deal. And then next thing you know, your second deal will take you 1 year. And then your third deal will take you 6 months. And then your fourth deal will take you 3 months. And you'll get better and better at it. And you'll start making more and more deals. And you don't have to give up your job. You don't have to give up your life. You don't have to do anything.
Yep.
Other than just that one deal.
Yep.
And
Build
then
it into your
one day you'll wake up and like, oh, I'm worth $3 million. Huh. How did that happen? Right?
It
'Cause you
just
did
it
one
just
deal.
happens before you know it, right?
Do your next deal. Okay. Jesse, thank you so much for filling in for Peter today. He would be proud of you.
Thank you.
But we broke the news to him a couple of years ago, told him that you were the original rookie.
He didn't take that news too well.
No, he didn't like it too much, but he eventually swallowed that pill and he was good. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for taking your time.
Thanks for being here. Sorry about kids and dogs, but always a joy to be here and chat.
I'm okay with the kids and the dogs. They're all part of the deal.
They are.
So just before we go, I want to make sure I tell the listeners that wherever you watched us or wherever you listen to us, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like us, make sure you leave a comment, and inside of the chat, there's a link there that will get you some free stuff. It's actually our calculator. I put in there our Creative REI Replay calculator, which if you get 3 or 4 numbers from the seller, like their selling price and how long they want to go and all that kind of stuff, it actually does all the deals for you. It gives you the deals in a red light, yellow light, or a green light, so you know which deals to do, which deals not to do. And it's actually as if you were sending me all your deals and I was doing the math for you, like I was doing today. So you can get free use of that calculator for a couple weeks, maybe longer. If you go in the link in the chat, in the link of the description, and you can get them then. Okay. So thank you very much for being with us. Podcast number 391 is done, and we will talk to you on podcast number 392. Over and out.